Hey guys, welcome to SmallmouthCrush. Today I'm going to go over a recap of the two major tournaments I just fished. One being the FLW Costa on Lake Champlain, and the second tournament, the Bassmaster Northern Open on Oneida Lake up in Syracuse. I'm going to go over all the things I did right, some of the things that went wrong, and what I would do differently coming up. Alright, so I'm just getting dried out, reorganized, regrouped. I got a mess of stuff. I mean, you ever see a Carolina rig rod like that? I don't know. I'll tell you what, it was a great couple of weeks of fishing. I poured my heart and soul into trying to figure out these fish. And so I just want to do a quick little recap of the tournaments. The first one was the FLW Costa on Lake Champlain. And that one, you know, Lake Champlain's a lake I love to fish. It's a great lake for tournaments. And I spent a good week there in practice. And I knew going into it, I had a feeling that the fish were going to still be on beds. It's a later season. We had a lot of cold weather in this spring, and that postponed the spawn. Plus, there's always a group of fish that spawn a little bit later on that lake. And so the first couple days, I targeted the mid-region, Burlington area, and it turns out, you know, I was on the right mindset. I was just looking in the wrong places. So I spent a good day or two searching for bedding fish in the wrong location. The water temp there was still a little bit cooler, and I don't know if those fish spawned a little later or if they were done spawning. I didn't find a lot of empty beds, but it turns out a lot of the anglers that got fish, that got bedding fish, were fishing a little bit further south than where I was. And so I wish I could have spent a few more days more south. Ticonderoga, which is famous for its largemouth fishing, which is an area I only fished a few times, I always try to stay north, and so I really crossed that out. Plus the reports that were coming in was that Ty was fishing a little bit more tough this year. They just got off the spawn, so there was kind of a post-spawn funk, if you will. The grass wasn't growing up as well as I'd like it to be. So I really was able to just cross that out, and I concentrated most of my effort mid-lake north. Now the northern part of the lake, I was able to get on a few fish, but you could tell in my practice videos that wasn't anything I was looking for. I was never on anything real special until later in that week. I decided to start fishing a little bit deeper, and I was fishing in the inland sea, and a lot of those fish were done spawning already. I did find a small group in the inland sea that were on beds, but it was nothing serious. It was 12 to 13 pounds, and I did check on them right before practice, and they were still there, but I knew it wasn't going to do me any good. You know, consequently, I was just kind of exploring some different parts of the lake, and you'll see in the video, I ran into that creek where there was a few post-spawn fish loaded up in there. And for day one of the Costa event, that's what really saved me, was being able to catch those fish. Because I also located some fish out deep. And I was really just drop shotting. I was drop shotting with a Gajo Spirit Shad. And that really, you know, those fish were real healthy, real nice size. And they were going to definitely help, you know, during the tournament. So I had that kind of as a backup plan and a place I was going to run to if the creek didn't produce. Well, on day one, the fish definitely were in the creek. I was able to put together a decent start of the limit. And then I went out and caught one on a Carolina rig, you know, just like this. Not so, you know, crazy, beat up looking. It was rigged up right. All my gear was ready to go. I was ready to put some fish in the boat. And I did. I came away with, I think I had 16 pounds, just under 16, which was enough for like 29th place out of 200 boats for day one, within striking distance of the top 10. And so the next day, that deep spot didn't hold fish for me on day one. I went there, I went to all 3 or 4 of those spots and just could not get a bite. And so, you know, I left out of there. Day 2, I went back to that creek. It started raining, the weather was terrible, the winds were horrific. And I ended up fishing that creek, and I didn't get a single bite. There was 0 fish to be had in there. And so by noon, I didn't really have a fish. I was on my way. By 10 o'clock, I was out of there, had to fight the waves, and I was able to get to my second deep spot, and I started throwing that black Gajo Spirit Shad. And that's really what what helped put that second day's weight in the boat. So the spirit shed I was throwing, I have my go-to gobies box, so they all imitate the goby. And I was throwing the smaller black version. There's a regular size here. And then the, I guess you call it the mini spirit shad. And that's what I was throwing on a drop shot. I had about 1.5 foot, 2 foot leader. And I was working those areas. And that was really the key for me to put those fish in the boat. It was a lot of wind, a lot of waves, a lot of rain throughout that day, but I was able to call up to a decent limit, drop shotting. I never got one of those bigger bites I had in practice, unfortunately. And about an hour, 45 minutes to go, everything calmed down, the sun came out a little bit, and I ended up throwing a super spook and was able to get another key fish. And I had a few other blow-ups. If you guys watch that video, you'll notice there was something going on there with that spook. The fish were starting to come up and bite. Unfortunately, I had like 15 minutes before I had to leave. And I knew I had, at least a check, and I wanted to secure that, so I left a little bit earlier than I should have. I got back towards the ramp with about 25 minutes to spare. But those are the decisions you have to make. Let's say I fished another 10, 15 minutes and had a motor issue, or my batteries died, or there's things like that. And I was in an isolated area where there wasn't any other boats, so I wanted to at least get back, secure that check, and make sure that I can get in, with my fish. And that's really all comes down to decisions. I wish I would have stayed there another 10 or 15 minutes, and maybe could have called up a fish or two. But I had a decent bag, and so I walked out of there with a decent check. I'm sitting 25th in points in the FLW Costa. I decided I'm going to fish the next one, which is on Thousand Islands, coming up in a few weeks. St. Lawrence River, Lake Ontario. It's the week after the Elite Series leave the river. And I have a lot of experience up there. I feel pretty confident. I'm actually excited about that one. That's going to be a good tournament. That's going to really suit my strengths when it comes to smallmouth fishing. And I suspect there's going to be a lot of shallow fish as well as deep fish. Perhaps a fish or two on bed still. Dare I say it? Maybe. And if they are, I'm going to find them. So I'm looking forward to that event. What's really cool now is the FLW Costa Series. That's going to allow me, there's one other event after that that's on the Potomac. So again, I'm going to take one at a time. I'd like to finish well in the points and try to win Angler of the Year for that series. That'll be pretty cool. I don't know the whole details on that. Don't quote me, but I think the Angler of the Year goes to the Forest Wood Cup, which would be huge. Second to the Bassmaster Classic. Now, they also have an end of the year championship, which is on Kentucky Lake. I've only fished Kentucky Lake for one day for about 6 to 8 hours around some bridge while I was traveling to another lake. I had some time to kill. And so I don't really have a lot of experience on Kentucky Lake, but I'll get ramped up for that when the time comes. So looking forward to the remaining Costa Series events, and we're just going to take one at a time and see what happens. So in the meantime, I also am going to be competing in the FLW BFL, which is back on Oneida Lake. That's coming up here. I'm going to have a video. I'm going to have one day of practice and then the tournament, so that'll all be videoed for you guys. So hopefully I do well there. In the FLW BFL Northeast Division, I'm currently sitting number 1 in points. I had a good finish on the Potomac and then another good finish on the Chesapeake Bay. So if I can stay in the top 1 in Angler of the Year, that's kind of a cool thing. I won Angler of the Year in the past, a couple years ago in that division. There's going to be 3 more tournaments though. So there's Oneida, Lake Champlain, and then Thousand Islands, I believe in September. And that one gets you to another regional tournament where they, I believe, take the top 6, go on to finish and fish in the All-American, which would be huge. Never made it to the All-American. That would be something that I would love to be able to do. So those are the events I'm going to be focusing on from here on out. I want to go over the Oneida Lake event. So the Bassmaster Northern Oneida Lake tournament. Coming off of Lake Champlain, I drove straight to Oneida. I was going to get basically Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, so 3.5 days of practice in. And that lake I'm pretty familiar with. I have a lot of good areas. I fished it that time of the year. And so I was excited. I got there and put a full day of practice in right away and fished all my spots that I fished in the past this time of year. And it just seemed the fish weren't there. They weren't in those areas. I couldn't get a topwater bite, although I know some of the guys, in the opens, they take the top 12 fish the last day. And I was really hoping I could make that top 12. If you win one, you go to the Bassmaster Classic. And then, of course, the top 5 in points throughout the year go on to qualify for the Bassmaster Elite Series. So I'd love to be able to re-qualify for that. Unfortunately, you guys will see in the footage if you watch any of those practice videos as well as the tournament, I ended up getting on some really good fish in practice. I had a very respectable day one, although the fish were getting a lot bigger this year. There's a lot of gobies in the system, and because of that, those fish are just feeding, and they're getting big. Within 2 to 3 to 4 years, Oneida Lake is going to be putting out some giant bags of smallies. I always thought Oneida was a place where you just bypass. I head up to Ontario if you want the really big fish. It's a great lake for tournament fishing, but for fun fishing, you can catch 2.5, 3.5 pounders all day long. And I kind of just blew it off. But I think in the next couple years, it's going to be a legit place to catch a 20-pound bag of smallies. I really do. Still a great largemouth lake, still a fun lake, but I'm looking forward to the size of those fish, especially now that they're on gobies, and the population of gobies is just getting a lot more. And the reason why I know that is because when I was drop shotting, I was constantly getting pecked by the gobies. And more so than last year, I realized probably about 4 years ago that there was gobies in the system, may even be a little bit longer than that. But in the last couple of years, they really came on strong, and that's only going to help the smallmouth population as well as all the other fish as well. I know walleyes eat gobies. It's just going to help the system out quite a bit with that forage. So day one of the Bassmaster Northern Open on Oneida, I was able to get on some drop shotting and got a few good fish in the boat. And I also was just throwing out a little Kitech 2.8 and was able to come in with a decent weight. I was only a couple pounds off from the cut. I think I had just under 16 pounds there as well. 19 was leading. And there was a lot of people tied and grouped up there fighting for that spot on the next day. The next day came, and I had 11 bites all day. I decided to drop shot all day long. There was no wind. I couldn't throw that Kitech. I couldn't work some of the other baits, dragging the tube, things like that. So I ended up drop shotting. I had 11 bites, and I was only able to get 5 of them in the boat. 6 of the fish were all huge. I fought these fish for 8 to 10 minutes, and then they just popped off. The line didn't break, nothing like that. They just came off. And, I've used the owner mosquitoes number 2s and 4s for years. And I'm not sure what the problem was, but I lost confidence in this. I really have. I don't recommend the mosquito drop shot hook anymore. I can't. It cost me, at a bare minimum, a $2,500 check if I would have just got one of those fish in. I had a 12-incher that weighed 9 ounces in my bag that day. And I just needed to get that replaced with 6 of those other fish I lost. And, I don't know. I talked to a buddy of mine, Matt, with Bass Talk Live. We were talking on the phone about what could have been the issue. And his thoughts were he's heard that when they come off the spawn, sometimes the mouths are a little bit, they're worn. They've been moving gravel and rocks and rubble, making their beds and wearing down their skin, so it's a little bit softer. And perhaps that was the issue I was running into. But I'm going to switch over in the next couple of weeks when I head up north. I'm going to go back to what I used to use, which is a Gamakatsu split shot drop shot hook. And then I also got some of the Aaron Martin's drop shot hooks by Gamakatsu that I'm going to try. Another friend of mine on Champlain gave me some Trokar drop shot hooks, which I probably should have had on and used. So I'm going to experiment with those as well. Trying to adjust. I have to adjust and figure out what went wrong on that Oneida Lake event. I was on the right fish. I should have had 17.5 pounds and probably would have been real close to that top 12 cut. And it's just frustrating. I put in all that work, all that effort, to come home with 0. I ended up in 76th place with, I think I had 13 pounds on day 2. The weights were so close. Another 3 to 4 pounds would have really moved me in the standings. And unfortunately, a 76th place doesn't quite make sense for me to continue on to the James River or Douglas Lake as far as points. I would have to take a top 3 or 4 in both events to potentially squeeze into a top 5 spot for Angler of the Year. And so I'm just going to focus elsewhere, focus on the FLW Tour, FLW Costa Series moving forward. And I just wish I didn't lose those fish, guys. So if you guys have any recommendations as far as drop shot hooks, you know, I consider myself, I mean, I love drop shot and I do it quite a bit. I've never ran into issues with these. But in practice on Champlain, I lost a few. And then again on Oneida Lake during the tournament. And, you know, it left a pretty bitter taste in my mouth. I'm still trying to recover. I go over those fish losses every day. It's like the first thing I think of when I wake up. And that's going to take a couple of days, couple of weeks to wear off, but those fish will haunt me forever. I will never forget that. And you guys know as anglers, when you lose fish, especially in a tournament, you don't forget. But all you can do is try to improve and get better. And so that's what I plan on doing. Right now, the next event is going to be on Oneida Lake, which is that BFL. So that's a week or two away. So I'm just going to prepare for that, get things ready, get my rods and reels in place. And I'll spend a day out there kind of running the same pattern I ran during the Oneida event, during the Northern Open. I'm just going to take a day or so. It doesn't really pay to put in more time just because, you know, it's a BFL. There's not... You know, you have to really take a top 5 to make any decent money in that event anyways, which, you know, I'm going to definitely bring it all. But I think I have enough experience to make some adjustments come Friday and then for the tournament and hopefully come with a good bag. So I'm excited to bring that video for you guys. And we'll see what happens. Let's hit it hard. We still got a lot of time left in the season. Things are just heating up right now. I appreciate my subscribers. If you haven't subscribed already, please hit the subscribe button. Leave any comments and likes below, and we'll see you guys on the water.